Why does someone who's gone still live so vividly inside you? Why does a single photo, a song, or even a scent pull you back as if no time has passed at all? And if your mind can replay love like it never ended, then why can't it let you forget? Welcome to NeuroNap Academy. Tonight we'll explore the hidden brain science of heartbreak, the chemistry that binds you, the circuits that keep memories alive, and the ancient survival codes that make loss feel like danger. We'll uncover why oxytocin glues you to someone long after they're gone, and why your brain treats absence like a wound that refuses to close. But here's the question at the heart of it all. If forgetting goes against your brain's design, then what does it really mean to move on? Because these ideas can be heavy to hold, I've prepared a free, practical guide with a clear summary of tonight's video. You'll find it in the description, like a map you can return to whenever you need it. Stay with me as we step into the quiet science behind why you can't forget your ex. You open your eyes in the middle of the night. The room is quiet, but your mind is not. Out of nowhere, an image appears. Their face, the exact curve of their smile, the sound of a laugh that still seems to echo because memory doesn't ask permission. You didn't ask for it, you didn't want it. Therefore it feels unfair that someone absent can feel so present inside your head. Why does this happen? Because the brain returns to unfinished business. It treats memory not like a filing cabinet you close at will, but like a living current, always moving, always shaping the present with traces of the past. Therefore, what you wish to forget keeps circling back. Deep inside your skull, networks are scanning, updating, firing. When an emotional event takes place, first kiss, long talk in the dark, painful goodbye, the brain doesn't store raw data. It stamps importance with chemical signatures. Dopamine and adrenaline mark the moment because the system needs to remember what mattered. Therefore, you can misplace your keys, but recall the exact look in your ex's eyes when it ended. Imagine walking through a city at night. Most windows are dark, ordinary, forgettable, but a few glow and demand attention. Emotionally charged memories are those lit windows in the architecture of your mind because they were designed to shine brighter. Therefore, you cannot unsee them. Here the mystery deepens. The brain is not neutral about love, because falling in love floods the system with dopamine, the chemistry of anticipation and reward. Each message, each meeting, each sign of affection trains pathways to expect more. Therefore, the person becomes a learned source of joy and safety. When the bond breaks, the circuitry does not switch off but keeps searching for the source, like a thirsty traveler looking for water. The haunting memory, then, is not a mistake, but the brain doing its job, preserving what once gave you life. Because that same mechanism protects bonds, it also prolongs pain when the bond is gone. Therefore, the system that saved you can hurt you. Think of your brain as a storyteller. It dislikes unfinished tales, because a sudden breakup feels like a novel without its final chapter. The mind tries to resolve the plot, replaying scenes, examining details, whispering what if. Therefore, you stay awake, searching for closure reality may never grant. Meanwhile, each resurfacing memory triggers the body. The heartbeat quickens, the stomach tightens, muscles brace, because the nervous system rehearses what it recalls. To the brain, recall is repetition. Therefore, every remembrance practices the pattern, and the pattern deepens. But this isn't only tragedy. It reveals something humane. You are wired to keep connection alive in absence. Because evolution favored those who held on, remembering meant safety, protection, tribe. Therefore, the mechanism that aches today once guarded survival. Let that perspective in, and the haunting softens. It isn't punishment, but ancient wiring reminding you that bonds matter, that connection keeps you alive. Therefore, the ache testifies to your capacity for love. Still, why does memory arrive at the quietest hour? Because by day, the prefrontal cortex, your planner, buffers and distracts, but at night, external demands fade. The hippocampus and amygdala speak louder without the city noise. Therefore, what was hidden rises, and what was pushed away reappears. So when the face returns at 2 a.m., it isn't sabotage but processing. In the silence, the mind projects what still needs integrating. Therefore, the theatre lights up only after the street's empty. Consider a scratched record. The needle reaches the groove and circles, repeating the same melody, because that is the path carved into vinyl. You may wish for silence, but the song plays until a new groove exists. Therefore, the way forward is not forcing a stop, but carving new patterns. new associations, new melodies for the needle to follow. For now, you hear the echo and feel the weight. There is pain here, but also profound humanity, because to be haunted is to be alive, and to remember is to be capable of love. The mystery only deepens. If love can feel like a haunting, what is it truly? Is it mere emotion, fleeting and light, or chemistry, mechanical and storm-like within your circuits? Therefore we go next into the hidden alchemy of love, where feeling meets molecule, and where forgetting begins not with memory but with biology. When you think back to those first days of falling in love, it feels almost unreal. The late-night conversations that seemed endless, the rush of excitement just from seeing their name appear on your screen, the electricity of the first touch. It felt magical, and yet beneath that magic, something very physical was happening. Your brain was being bathed in chemicals, tuned to a new rhythm it could not ignore. We often talk about love as if it were purely an emotion, a mystery of the heart, something beyond the reach of science. But what you felt in those early moments was not just poetry, it was chemistry, orchestrated by your nervous system. To understand why forgetting your ex is so difficult, you must first understand that love itself is not a single feeling, but a symphony of biological signals that trained your brain to value one person above all others. Consider dopamine, the messenger of anticipation. Each interaction with your partner became a cue for its release. The smallest text message could feel like a gift, not because of the words themselves, but because your brain had linked that person with the possibility of reward. Dopamine's role is not satisfaction, but expectation. The thrill of something good is about to happen. That is why you found yourself replaying conversations in your head, waiting for replies, feeling your chest tighten with the possibility of seeing them. Layered onto this came oxytocin and vasopressin, the bonding hormones, released during physical closeness, during touch, during intimacy. They acted like a glue, binding your sense of safety and belonging to that person. You were not just in love emotionally, you were chemically tethered with your brain writing the connection into its survival circuits. And beneath it all, serotonin levels shifted too. Falling in love often mirrors a state of obsession where intrusive thoughts appear again and again. That is why new lovers describe themselves as unable to focus, unable to think of anything else. The brain had marked this person as priority, and all other signals were quieted in comparison. Think of it like this: your mind is a garden of signals. Normally dozens of flowers bloom, work, friends, hobbies, ambitions. But when love enters, certain flowers surge upward, towering over the rest, their colors too bright to ignore. The sunlight of your attention bends toward them, and the rest of the garden recedes into shadow. This is why your ex became not just one person among many, but the central figure in your inner landscape. But here's the secret. What feels like choice is, in many ways, design. Evolution wired these chemical storms to ensure that two individuals would stay bonded long enough to create and protect life. Without them, attachment would fade too easily. With them, love became something not only emotional, but necessary. And this explains why, after a breakup, the brain cannot simply decide to let go. The circuits that once made you feel alive are the same circuits that now replay the absence. The dopamine system, accustomed to reward, continues to fire in expectation, like a dog waiting at the door long after its owner has gone. The oxytocin bonds, once sweet, now ache with the lack of touch. The same chemistry that made love irresistible makes forgetting feel impossible. Pause for a moment and reflect. Isn't it strange that something so beautiful can become so painful? That the same brain that gave you the high of love now gives you the low of loss. It is like standing in the ruins of a cathedral, once a place of awe, now a reminder of what was destroyed, and yet the stones are still sacred. The memory of what was built cannot vanish overnight. But perhaps there is comfort in knowing that what you feel is not weakness of will, but the natural echo of biology. You are not broken for remembering. You are human, caught in a design that values connection so deeply it refuses to erase it quickly. Science has even shown that the brain in love resembles the brain under the influence of addictive substances. The same reward circuits, the same dopamine surges, the same desperate longing when deprived. That is why calling an ex toxic resonates more than we realize, because the relationship was, in the most literal sense, intoxicating. Imagine love not as a soft emotion, but as a chemical contract. Your brain signed it with molecules, agreeing to treat this person as essential. And when the contract is broken, the ink does not simply fade, it stains, leaving behind traces that resurface again and again. Yet this knowledge carries a hidden invitation. If love is chemistry, then so is healing. The same brain that once learned to tether itself can, over time, learn to rewire. New experiences, new bonds, new habits, all of these can train the same circuits to shift their allegiance. It is slow, but it is possible, because the brain is not a static machine. It is plastic, adaptable, always capable of growth. So the next time you wonder why you cannot simply erase your ex, remember this: love was never just in your heart. It was in your blood, your neurons, your very design. The body does not forget overnight what it worked so hard to preserve. And yet, to fully understand why forgetting feels impossible, we must look deeper into the machinery of memory itself. For while chemistry creates the bond, it is memory that makes it endure. Why do certain moments with an ex replay in detail, while other parts of life fade quickly into blur? Why can a single song or place transport you instantly back, as if time had folded? To answer that, we must step into the vaults of memory, the hippocampus and the amygdala, where emotion and recollection are fused into something unforgettable. You remember the rush of waiting for their message, the tiny flash of light on your phone screen, the brief vibration in your pocket, the surge of warmth before you even read the words. That small signal could change the rhythm of your entire day. 1 second, you were restless. The next, you were alive with anticipation. This was not magic, it was dopamine. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, but that name is misleading. What it really does is something subtler, more powerful. Dopamine is not about satisfaction, it is about expectation. It is the reason your heart would speed up at the thought of seeing them, the reason you refreshed your messages, the reason the smallest sign of their presence made your body feel like it was preparing for something extraordinary. Inside your brain, dopamine works as a prediction system. It fires not when the reward arrives, but when you believe it is about to. Each interaction with your ex was not just an experience, it was a lesson to your neurons. This person equals reward. Over time, the association deepened, like a well-worn trail carved into a forest, and once a trail exists, the brain will follow it again and again, even when the destination no longer awaits at the end. Imagine a slot machine in a casino. Each pull of the lever, each spin of the wheel, is accompanied by a flash of lights, the ringing of bells, the promise of a jackpot. The machine is designed to keep you trying, to keep you believing that maybe this time the reward will come. Love operates in a similar way. Your brain becomes conditioned to expect reward in the presence of your partner, and when that reward disappears, the circuitry does not simply collapse. It keeps searching, keeps predicting, keeps pulling the lever, even though the machine is gone. This is why forgetting feels so difficult. It is not just the absence of a person, it is the lingering presence of pathways built in anticipation. The brain craves the chemical surge, the rush of possibility, and when it doesn't come, you feel not only sadness but withdrawal. Consider for a moment the poetry in this design. Anticipation, more than reward itself, is what drives us. The thrill of waiting at the corner before meeting them, the nervous excitement of planning a date, the long gaze before a kiss. These moments often feel more intense than the reward itself. That is dopamine at work. It amplifies the waiting, stretches time, heightens every sensation leading up to what you hope will come. But here lies the paradox. Dopamine does not teach you to be satisfied, it teaches you to keep searching. And so, after a breakup, the system remains restless. It replays memories, not because they are comforting, but because they hint at the possibility of reward. Each recollection is like a ghostly message. Maybe, somehow, the story could return. You can feel this most clearly in the obsessive checking of social media, the urge to revisit old photos, the temptation to send a message you know you shouldn't. These actions are not logical, they are chemical. Your brain is still seeking the spark of dopamine it once learned to expect. And here is where the science blends into philosophy. Is love then just a trick of chemistry? Are your most profound feelings simply the echoes of neurotransmitters? Or is there something deeper, something that chemistry makes possible but cannot fully explain? Perhaps both are true. Love is not less real because it is chemical. It is more miraculous because something so intangible emerges from molecules firing in silence. Think of dopamine as the brush, not the painting. It lays the strokes of anticipation, but what you felt, the connection, the intimacy, the meaning was the artwork your mind created from those strokes. Chemistry gave it color, but you gave it shape. Still, the reality remains. The same dopamine that once lifted you now chains you. In studies of addiction, researchers have seen how the brain's reward system lights up in anticipation of drugs, even when none are delivered. The same glow appears when a person sees the face of their beloved, and after loss, the system continues to spark, chasing a reward that no longer exists. Imagine walking into a familiar bakery. Each time you entered before, the smell of bread meant warmth, taste, and fullness. One day, the bakery closes, but the smell remains in the air. You step inside, only to find the shelves empty. Your brain, for a while, will keep expecting bread. That is the trap of dopamine. It clings to the promise, not the fulfillment. And this explains why the haunting memory of your ex does not fade easily. It is not only emotional, but predictive. Your brain keeps leaning forward, expecting the pattern to continue, and each time it does not, the absence cuts deeper, like a note of music that never resolves. But here lies a question worth holding. If dopamine is about expectation, what happens when you create new ones? If your brain is so skilled at predicting rewards, can it be taught to expect joy in new places, with new experiences, with new people? The answer is yes, but it requires patience, repetition, and the slow building of fresh trails in the forest of your mind. For now, though, understand this. The longing you feel is not a flaw. It is the echo of dopamine's promise, a system designed to keep you reaching, searching, yearning, and while it hurts, it also reveals your capacity for hope, the same hope that one day those pathways will lead you to something new. But dopamine is only one part of the story. Anticipation may set the stage, yet it is not what holds bonds together. For that your brain calls upon a different chemistry, oxytocin and vasopressin, the quiet architects of attachment, the invisible glue that makes two people feel inseparable. And to see why your ex remains so present in your mind, we must step into that chemistry next. Think back to the moments of closeness, the quiet spaces where words were not necessary, just the touch of a hand, the steady rhythm of a breath beside yours, the way silence felt less like emptiness and more like presence. Those moments seemed simple, but inside your brain they carried enormous weight. They were writing the bond, weaving invisible threads between you and your partner, with a chemistry that made the connection feel not just emotional, but essential. That chemistry is oxytocin and vasopressin. Oxytocin is sometimes called the cuddle hormone. It flows during physical closeness, hugging, kissing, intimacy, but its effect is not just to make you feel warm. Oxytocin acts as a biological glue. It links the sense of safety and belonging to the person you are with. Every time you held your ex, every time you touched them, your brain paired the sensation with trust. This is my person. I am safe here. Vasopressin plays a quieter but equally powerful role. It is associated with long-term bonding, the loyalty and protective instincts that keep a pair connected beyond the initial rush of passion. In animal studies, species that release more vasopressin are more likely to form lifelong bonds. It is not only about attraction, it is about stability, about staying. Together, these chemicals don't just give pleasure, they create attachment. They turn love into something your brain treats like survival. Because for most of human history, staying close to another meant safety. Two people together could guide each other, care for each other, raise children more successfully than alone. Oxytocin and vasopressin are the brain's way of ensuring that love does not remain fleeting, but becomes anchored, lasting, enduring. This is why forgetting your ex is not a simple choice. Your brain was chemically trained to hold them close. The embrace you miss is not just memory, it is the echo of a bond written in molecules. You are not just recalling, you are still feeling, because oxytocin is not erased by absence. Its pathways linger, like faint lines drawn into the stone of your nervous system. Think of a bridge built between two islands. Every shared moment of intimacy, every gesture of tenderness, laid another plank across the water. Over time, the bridge grew sturdy, wide enough for trust to cross easily. When the relationship ends, the bridge is not instantly dismantled. It remains, stretching across the gap, waiting, even if no one walks it anymore. That is what oxytocin and vasopressin leave behind, the architecture of attachment, still intact, even when the bond is broken. And here lies the paradox. What once brought comfort now brings ache. The same closeness that once soothed you now deepens the wound of absence. You miss not only the person, but the safety their presence represented. Your brain, conditioned by chemistry, keeps reaching across the empty bridge, hoping to feel the touch that told it, you are not alone. Science shows that oxytocin also interacts with memory. It does not just create warmth in the moment, it strengthens the recollection of connection. That is why memories of closeness remain vivid, even years later. The laughter, the scent, the subtle details of intimacy, these were not stored as ordinary moments. They were marked with a special seal, a chemical highlight that told your brain, keep this, protect this, return to this. But step back for a moment and see the beauty in this design. Attachment is not weakness, it is the architecture of survival. Your longing, painful as it feels, is proof that you are wired to connect deeply. And though right now it feels like a chain, it is also your greatest strength, because the same capacity that binds you to the past is the one that will one day allow you to bond again. Reflect on this. Oxytocin and vasopressin are not only about romance, they are also the chemistry of friendship, of family, of care. They are what make a mother hold her child close, what make friends feel loyalty, what make human beings able to form societies built on trust. The glue that now feels like it traps you is the same glue that has allowed humanity to survive, generation after generation. So when you miss your ex, know that it is not foolishness, it is biology. Your brain was built to keep bonds alive. It is not punishing you, it is protecting the design that once ensured your ancestors lived long enough to pass life forward. But there is another layer, one that makes this bond even harder to break. Because while oxytocin ties love to safety, another chemical, cortisol, ties heartbreak to stress. And when love collapses, stress ensures that the memories stay sharp, that the pain does not fade quickly, that the absence echoes louder than reason. Quick pause. So far, love runs on chemistry, not just feeling, because anticipation trains the chase, and oxytocin vasopressin glue the bond. Next, why cortisol stamps heartbreak into memory. There is a moment after a breakup when the body itself seems to betray you. Sleep grows restless, appetite shifts, the chest feels heavy, as if carrying a weight no one else can see. Your thoughts circle endlessly, but your heart pounds as though danger is near. This is not only grief, it is stress, woven into your biology by a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone, though its role is more complex. In times of danger, cortisol surges to prepare the body for survival, sharpening attention, raising blood pressure, flooding the muscles with energy. For your ancestors, this meant the difference between escaping a predator or becoming prey, but the brain does not distinguish between physical threat and emotional loss. The absence of your ex, the collapse of the bond that once promised safety, is interpreted as a threat to survival itself, and so cortisol rises, even though no lion is chasing you, even though the danger is only a memory. This surge has consequences for memory. Cortisol interacts with the hippocampus, the brain's archivist, and the amygdala, the brain's emotional sentinel. Together, they ensure that stressful events are not forgotten. The logic is simple. If something caused pain, remember it, so it can be avoided in the future. In heartbreak, this means the very moments you wish to forget, the goodbye, the silence, the absence, are the ones etched most deeply. Imagine trying to erase a drawing from paper, only to find that the pencil was pressed so hard it left grooves behind. Even when the graphite is gone, the lines remain indelible. Cortisol is the hand pressing the pencil harder. It ensures that heartbreak does not fade lightly. But here is the cruel paradox. Remembering the loss does not protect you in the present, it prolongs the suffering. Each time the memory surfaces, cortisol rises again, renewing the stress, locking the moment deeper still. It is a loop, a cycle where the act of remembering keeps fueling the very chemistry that prevents forgetting. This is why, weeks or months after a breakup, you might still wake with the sudden jolt of their image in your mind. The brain has tagged those memories with urgency. It replays them, not to torment you, but because it believes they are crucial to your survival. Don't forget this, the cortisol whispers. This matters. And yet, even within this cruelty, there is meaning. Your pain is not senseless. It is the echo of a system designed to preserve life. To long for your ex so intensely is to feel the same system that once kept your ancestors safe from storms and predators. The stress you feel is not weakness. It is the ancient machinery of vigilance, misapplied to the absence of a loved one. Think of it like fire. In the wild, fire meant warmth and survival, but in the wrong place, it burns the home you built. Cortisol is that fire, necessary, powerful, but dangerous when it escapes its boundaries. After heartbreak, the flame leaps into memory, and the mind glows too brightly with what it longs to dim. And here lies a deeper reflection. Perhaps this is why heartbreak feels so consuming. It is not only sadness, it is vigilance. Your brain is scanning, searching, as though losing this person means the world itself is unsafe. The sleepless nights, the restless body, the constant thoughts, these are not punishments, they are alarms, ringing long after the fire is out. But there is also a strange poetry in this. To be kept awake by memory is to be reminded of how deeply you cared, how fully you allowed another to shape your inner world. The stress is painful, yes, but it is also proof of love's gravity. The same system that refuses to let go is the one that made connection feel so vital in the first place. Still, the science is clear. Cortisol not only strengthens memory, it distorts it. Under stress, the brain tends to focus on what feels most intense, sometimes exaggerating the pain, sometimes amplifying the sense of loss. This may explain why heartbreak feels endless, why the absence looms larger than it should. Stress magnifies, making shadows into giants. And yet over time, the body cannot sustain such high levels of cortisol. Slowly, inevitably, the flame begins to fade. The grooves in memory remain, but the heat softens, the urgency weakens. This is why, years later, you may still remember your ex, but without the same sharp pain. Biology itself begins the healing, even if slowly. But before healing, there is the storm, and in that storm, the memories burn brightest. You recall not only moments of loss, but moments of love, because cortisol and emotion are intertwined. The hippocampus stores the narrative, the amygdala colors it with feeling, and cortisol ensures neither fades quickly. Together, they create the haunting vividness of heartbreak. So when you ask yourself, why can't I stop thinking of them? Remember this, your brain is not failing you. It is protecting you, in its own misguided way. It is making sure you do not easily forget something it deems essential. It does not realize that the lesson you need is not to avoid the person, but to accept the loss. That understanding belongs to consciousness, not chemistry. And yet, even this cruel design has another dimension. Because if cortisol writes pain so deeply, it also makes growth unforgettable. The lessons you carry, the strength you build, the resilience you form, these too are etched by stress. In time, the very hormone that carved the wound can also carve the wisdom that follows. Still, the question remains, why are some memories more vivid than others? Why do certain moments with your ex replay like high-definition films, while the rest of your life fades into blur? To answer this, we must step into the strange phenomenon of flashbulb memories, where emotion and novelty make certain scenes unforgettable, and why love, especially lost love, creates some of the brightest flashes of all. Close your eyes for a moment and recall the first time you saw your ex. Not just the setting, but the details, the way the light fell, the color of their clothes, the exact turn of their expression. It is astonishing, isn't it, how clearly certain moments replay in your mind, as though they were recorded with a precision camera, while countless other days of your life blur into haze. This vividness is not random. It is the work of two guardians of memory, the hippocampus and the amygdala. Together, they decide what gets stored and how brightly it will glow in your mind. The hippocampus, nestled deep within your brain, is like an archivist in a vast library. Every day it catalogues experiences, shelving some in the long corridors of memory while discarding others as unimportant. But the archivist does not work alone. Standing at its side is the amygdala, a small almond-shaped sentinel that acts as an emotional alarm. When something stirs your heart, joy, fear, love, or loss, the amygdala rings its bell. It tells the hippocampus, this moment matters, engrave it deeply. That is why the face of your ex, the sound of their voice, the moments of laughter, or the sting of their goodbye remain etched in detail. The amygdala marked them with urgency, and the hippocampus carved them into permanence. Imagine your brain as a gallery. Most memories are quick sketches, faint and unfinished, but emotional experiences become oil paintings, rich, layered, resistant to fading. The hippocampus is the artist, and the amygdala provides the intensity of color. Love, with its cascade of joy and pain, becomes an entire wing of the gallery, filled with paintings so vivid they demand your attention each time you pass through. This is why heartbreak can feel like being trapped in a museum you did not choose to enter. The images hang on the walls whether you want to look at them or not. You try to avert your gaze, but they draw you back, bright and insistent. And here lies another paradox. The very mechanism that allowed your ancestors to remember danger, to avoid poisonous plants, to recognize allies and enemies, is the same one that now makes you recall your ex with painful clarity. Biology has no filter for modern love. It treats it with the same gravity as life and death. For the brain, the bond you formed was survival. Its loss is a threat. Consider the phenomenon of flashbulb memories. These are moments remembered with striking clarity, as if a camera flash froze them in time. People often describe remembering exactly where they were when they heard shocking news, or when something deeply emotional occurred. The breakup, the final argument, the last embrace. These are your personal flashbulb memories. The amygdala ensured that the snapshot was burned into your neurons, impossible to erase. But this vividness is not punishment, it is information. The brain magnifies emotional moments because they shape who you are. Each bright memory, though painful, is also a record of the depth with which you lived, the intensity with which you felt. To forget too easily would be to lose part of yourself. Reflect on this. Every detail you remember about your ex is proof of your capacity for connection. The sharpness of the memory reveals not only the pain of loss, but the richness of love. A life without such memories would be safer, perhaps, but emptier too. Still, this design has its cost. Because the hippocampus and amygdala strengthen memories under emotional stress, heartbreak becomes self-perpetuating. Each time you recall the past, the networks fire again, rehearsing the pain, reinforcing the pathways. The gallery lights brighten, the paintings sharpen, and the images grow harder to ignore. Think of it like carving into wood. Each time the tool passes over the same line, the groove deepens. Memory works the same way. The more you revisit it, the more permanent it becomes. This is why rumination, the repeated circling of thoughts, intensifies heartbreak. The hippocampus strengthens what the amygdala insists is vital, and the cycle repeats. And yet, here too lies possibility. Because the brain is plastic, new experiences can eventually redraw the gallery, new paintings can be hung, new colors can shine. The vividness of old memories may never fully fade, but they can become part of a larger picture, one where they no longer dominate the walls. But before new art can be painted, we must understand one more truth. It is not only emotion that makes memories unforgettable. Novelty, what is surprising, unexpected, unique, also stamps them into permanence. The moments of joy or pain with your ex that stand out most vividly often carry this quality: a spontaneous adventure, an unusual phrase, a goodbye you never saw coming. These moments are not just emotional, they are novel, and novelty, to the brain, is like fire to film. It burns the image in high relief. This is the next step in our journey, to see how the bias for novelty amplifies memory, and why the unexpected twists of love and loss are the ones we struggle most to forget. Close your eyes and let a single moment rise, maybe the first time they looked at you as if no one else existed, or the night of an argument that seemed to split the world in two. These memories feel different from the ordinary. They arrive in sharp focus, framed in detail. You remember the exact tone of voice, the color of the sky, even the smell of the air. It is as if a flashbulb went off inside your brain, freezing the moment forever. Neuroscience calls these flashbulb memories. They are created when emotion collides with novelty, producing a mental photograph that endures. The amygdala, that small almond-shaped sentinel, signals urgency. The hippocampus, the archivist, carves the details into permanence. The brain's message is simple: this matters, do not lose it. That is why you remember not just your ex's face, but the scene, the sound, the smallest cues around them. The breakup, especially, becomes such a flashbulb moment. The brain does not allow it to fade like a forgotten errand. Instead, it highlights it again and again to ensure that you never misinterpret the lesson of loss. Imagine a camera in a dark room. Most experiences are recorded in low light, blurry and grainy, but when something shocking or emotional happens, the flash ignites, illuminating every corner. That single burst captures details you were not even aware of at the time. Years later, when you recall it, the memory shines with uncanny clarity. This is why you can forget an entire year of routine, but remember one conversation with your ex as if it happened yesterday. Emotion plus novelty equals permanence, and relationships are rich in both. The first date, the first confession of love, the first betrayal, the final goodbye, each is a perfect storm of feeling and surprise. Each becomes unforgettable. But here is the paradox. The vividness of these memories does not mean they are accurate. Research shows that flashbulb memories, though clear, are often distorted. People recall them with conviction, but the details shift over time. Your brain fills in gaps, reshapes edges, paints the memory with colors drawn from longing or regret. So when you revisit the moment you met your ex, or the night they left, you may feel it exactly as it was, yet part of it may be invention. Think of memory not as a photograph, but as a painting. Each time you revisit it, you add a stroke, a shadow, a highlight. Over time, the painting changes, even if you believe it remains the same. This is why ex-partners often remember the same relationship differently. Each has painted their own version of the same scene, and yet the emotional truth remains untouched. Even if the details shift, the intensity survives. What you feel when recalling your ex, the warmth, the ache, the sudden sting that is real, because it is the body reliving the cascade of chemistry that once accompanied the moment. This explains why heartbreak feels endless. The vividness of flashbulb memories ensures that reminders of your ex are everywhere. A street corner recalls a laugh. A certain perfume brings back an embrace. A song reopens the room of memory instantly. These triggers are not accidents. They are cues linked to those flashbulb photographs in your mind. Reflect on this. The very intensity that makes love beautiful is the same that makes its loss haunting. Without flashbulb memories, love would fade too quickly, but because of them, heartbreak burns long after the fire has gone out. And yet, even here, there is a hidden gift. The reason love feels so significant in your life is because it is preserved in this way. If every kiss and every goodbye faded like a grocery list, would love have the same power? The very ache you feel now is the evidence that you lived deeply, that your heart allowed itself to be marked. But there is also a danger. Flashbulb memories, when idealized, can distort healing. You may remember only the glow, not the shadow. You recall the sweetness of a trip, but not the tension of the return. You replay the sound of laughter, but mute the silence that followed. This is how the brain deceives, painting the past in golden tones, making the ex seem better, kinder, more perfect than reality. Think of it like an old photograph found in a drawer. Over time, it yellows and softens, the flaws fading while the beauty lingers. You look at it and feel a wave of nostalgia, forgetting the arguments, the difficulties, the truth of imperfection. This is the trick of flashbulb memory. It makes the past glow brighter than it truly was. And here lies the human dilemma. How do you heal from someone when your own brain insists on replaying their best moments in high definition? How do you let go when the film reel keeps looping, louder and clearer than the present? The answer begins with awareness. To know that memory is not truth but reconstruction is to loosen its grip. Each time you recall your ex, remind yourself this is a painting, not a photograph. It may feel real, but it has been altered by emotion, by time, by longing. This perspective does not erase the memory, but it softens its power. Still, one mystery remains. Why do novelty and surprise amplify memory so much? Why does the brain treat the unexpected as more valuable than the routine? The answer lies in survival. What is ordinary rarely matters to life and death. What is new, surprising, or shocking may hold danger or opportunity. Your ancestors who remembered novelty lived longer, and so today, you remember not the thousands of routine dinners, but the one extraordinary night with your ex that changed everything. Checkpoint. You've seen how hippocampus plus amygdala plus novelty make ex memories high definition. Next, loss as withdrawal, and why the brain flags separation as threat. Picture the moments with your ex that return most vividly. They are rarely the ordinary ones, the routine dinners, the casual messages, the quiet afternoons. What comes back with force are the unexpected details, the surprise gift, the unplanned trip, the sudden argument that changed the mood of an entire week. These are the fragments your mind clings to, the ones replayed in sharp clarity long after the relationship has ended. This is the bias of novelty. Your brain is wired to remember the unusual more than the ordinary. Evolution shaped it this way, because novelty often signaled danger or opportunity. A new fruit could be food or poison. A strange sound in the forest could mean prey to hunt or predator to avoid. To ignore novelty was to risk survival, and so even today, your brain elevates the unusual above the routine, treating the unexpected as more important, more memorable, more worthy of attention. In love, novelty is abundant. The first kiss, the first time you heard "I love you," the first fight, the first reconciliation, each of these is unexpected, breaking the rhythm of daily life, carrying emotional weight. The amygdala registers the surprise, the hippocampus engraves it deeply, and the memory becomes unforgettable. Think of your brain as a landscape where most days are small stones scattered across the ground. Novel moments are mountains rising sharply, impossible to miss, shaping the view of everything around them. When you look back on your relationship, you do not see the stones, you see the mountains. The routine has faded, but the novelty stands tall. This explains why letting go of an ex feels so difficult. The peaks of novelty dominate your memory, overshadowing the ordinary flaws, the daily conflicts, the moments of indifference. You remember the sudden spark of passion, not the slow erosion of connection. You recall the surprise of affection, not the fatigue of repetition. Your brain, biased toward novelty, edits the story to highlight what was rare and powerful, leaving out the rest. But this editing creates a distortion. It makes the past seem brighter, sweeter, more extraordinary than it truly was. You find yourself longing for the highs, forgetting the plateaus. This is why nostalgia after a breakup can feel so intoxicating. It is not an accurate replay, but a highlight reel curated by your own mind. Consider the metaphor of a theatre. Most performances are rehearsals, predictable and routine. But every so often there is an unscripted moment, a forgotten line, a sudden burst of emotion that electrifies the audience. Those are the moments people remember, retell, and treasure. In your relationship, novelty played the same role. It broke the script, and in doing so, it seared itself into memory. Yet here is the philosophical truth. Novelty is not just about survival, it is about meaning. We crave the extraordinary because it makes life feel alive. The moments with your ex that haunt you now are also the ones that gave your life texture, color, unpredictability. They are painful to recall, but they are also proof that you were fully present, fully human. Still, the bias of novelty has a cost. By focusing on the extraordinary, the brain tricks you into forgetting the balance of reality. It is like a painting that highlights only the brightest colors, leaving out the shadows that gave it depth. This is why, after a breakup, you may find yourself idealizing your ex, remembering only the adventures, the surprises, the laughter, while minimizing the tension, the disappointments, the silence. And this distortion keeps you bound. You chase the mountain peaks of memory, longing to climb them again, forgetting that life in the relationship was often spent in the valleys. The bias of novelty magnifies the exceptional and hides the ordinary, making moving on feel like losing something greater than it was. But there is a way to reframe this. What if the vividness of novelty is not a curse but a compass? What if the extraordinary moments with your ex were not meant to chain you to the past, but to remind you of what you are capable of feeling, of experiencing, of seeking again in new ways? The mountains in your memory are not only monuments of loss, they are signposts of possibility. Reflect on this. The very fact that you cannot forget those moments is proof that you are open to wonder. Your brain chose to mark them because they mattered, and though they hurt now, they also reveal your capacity to live with intensity. That capacity did not end with the breakup. It remains in you, waiting for new peaks to rise. Yet the story does not end with novelty, because while unusual moments become unforgettable, the pain of loss is amplified further by another mechanism, the way the brain responds to absence itself. When the bond breaks, the brain does not interpret it as mere disappointment, it experiences it as withdrawal, like the body deprived of a drug it depended on. And so the next step in our journey takes us into that shadow, the experience of heartbreak, not as sadness but as abstinence. To understand why your ex lingers, we must see love's loss not only as memory. You wake up and reach for your phone, not because you expect a message, but because a part of you still believes it might be there. You pass by a familiar cafe, and your body tenses, as if anticipating their presence. The silence of their absence does not feel like emptiness, it feels like craving. This is the hidden truth of heartbreak. It is not only sadness, it is withdrawal. When scientists scan the brains of people recently rejected by a partner, the images reveal something startling. The same neural circuits that activate during the withdrawal from addictive substances light up during romantic loss. Love, once established, is not just a feeling, it is a dependency, and when the bond is broken, the brain reacts as if deprived of a drug it needs to survive. This is why the pain of heartbreak is so visceral, so physical. The craving is not imagined, it is real, written into the chemistry of your neurons. The dopamine system, conditioned to expect reward from your ex, continues to fire, searching for the absent source. The oxytocin and vasopressin bonds, once comforting, now ache with emptiness. The cortisol of stress keeps you restless, alert, unable to let go. The entire orchestra of love plays in reverse, and what once lifted you now drags you into longing. Think of it like a garden suddenly cut off from water. The soil cracks, the leaves droop, the flowers wither. Your brain, once nourished by the presence of your partner, now signals drought. The craving for contact, for closeness, is not weakness, it is thirst. And here lies the paradox. If love were only joy, forgetting would be simple, but love is also survival. Your brain linked your ex to safety, protection, continuity. Their loss is not registered as an event, it is registered as a threat. The ancient machinery of your nervous system, tuned for tribal life, interprets absence as danger. Alone means vulnerable. Alone means at risk. The chemistry that once promised safety now screams alarm. That is why you find yourself obsessively replaying conversations, asking what went wrong, searching for clues. The brain in withdrawal tries to resolve the loss by grasping for the substance again. Just as the body of an addict yearns for one more dose, your mind yearns for one more word, one more sign, one more chance. But there is more. Withdrawal is not only about craving, it is about pain. Studies show that the brain regions activated during physical pain overlap with those triggered by romantic rejection. The sting you feel in your chest is not metaphorical, it is neural. The same circuits that flare when you cut your skin or bruise your body ignite when you think of your ex. Heartbreak hurts because in a very real sense the brain treats it as an injury. Imagine touching a wound. Each memory of your ex is like pressing on the bruise, reigniting the ache. You do not choose to feel it. The body reminds you, insisting that the injury is still fresh. But pause here and notice something profound. If love's absence mimics withdrawal, then your suffering is proof of how deeply you bonded. Your pain is not emptiness, it is evidence of connection. The wound shows that something mattered enough to mark you. To feel this intensely is to know you gave yourself fully, and though it hurts, it also reveals your capacity for depth. Still, the brain in withdrawal is merciless. It replays not only the good moments, but the pain of the break itself. It keeps you awake at night, makes food taste dull, turns music into a trigger. These are not failures of willpower, they are symptoms of abstinence. Philosophically, this invites a question: if love acts like a drug, is that a flaw in human design or a feature? Perhaps it is both. Addiction, after all, is destructive when misapplied, but in love, the same mechanism ensured that human beings formed bonds strong enough to raise children, protect each other, and survive in groups. The intensity of attachment was not a mistake, it was a survival strategy. The pain of loss today is the shadow of that ancient necessity. Think of early humans on the plains. To lose a partner was not only emotional, it was life-threatening. Alone, survival chances dropped. Together, there was protection, shared labor, warmth. So the brain evolved to resist separation with the same force it resists deprivation of food or water. That force lives on in you now, manifesting not as danger on the plains, but as longing for the one who left. And yet, even within this suffering, there is hope. Just as addicts recover, the brain in heartbreak adapts. The circuits that once screamed for your ex slowly quiet. The chemistry recalibrates. New bonds, new rewards, new rhythms emerge. The withdrawal does not last forever. It feels eternal in the moment, but biology is built to heal. Reflect on this. What if heartbreak is not only a wound, but also a cleansing? The withdrawal forces you to confront the depth of your dependency, to see how much of yourself was tied to another. And in that recognition, painful though it is, lies the seed of transformation. The very circuits that ache now will, in time, make space for new joy, new love, new safety. But before healing, the cycle deepens. Because the brain in withdrawal does not merely crave, it obsesses. It circles thoughts endlessly, replaying scenes, asking questions with no answer. This is the trap of rumination, the broken record of the mind, and it is the next layer of the science behind why you cannot forget your ex. Imagine this. You are walking through a crowded street, surrounded by noise and motion, yet your mind is elsewhere. Without warning, a memory surfaces, your ex, smiling, reaching for your hand, and suddenly the noise fades. Your body tenses as if something urgent has entered the present. This reaction is not only memory, it is vigilance. Your brain has treated the absence of your ex not as a neutral event, but as a threat, a danger to your survival. Why does this happen? Because to the brain, love is not a luxury, it is protection. Losing it triggers the same systems that once kept your ancestors alive when separated from their tribe. To be alone meant exposure to predators, vulnerability to hunger, and less chance of survival. Attachment was safety, separation was danger. Even today, your nervous system interprets the end of a relationship as a breach in the shield that once surrounded you. This is why heartbreak can feel like panic. The racing pulse, the restless thoughts, the inability to sleep, these are survival alarms. The body floods with cortisol, sharpening your senses, as if preparing you to face a predator. But there is no lion, no storm, no enemy. The danger is absence, a void your brain cannot easily understand. Studies show that the anterior cingulate cortex, a region involved in detecting social pain, overlaps with the areas activated by physical pain. The brain does not separate the two. Rejection, abandonment, loss, they are processed like wounds, like injuries to the body. This is why the phrase "a broken heart" feels literal. The ache in your chest is not metaphorical, it is neural reality. Think of your ex as a shelter your brain once relied upon. When that shelter collapses, you are left exposed. The mind, designed to guard against exposure, responds with alarm. That alarm is what keeps you awake at night, scanning the silence for threats that do not exist. The danger you feel is not outside, it is inside, coded into your biology. And here lies a profound reflection. Heartbreak hurts not because you are weak, but because you are human. The brain that kept your ancestors alive in hostile landscapes still beats in your chest. It does not know that in today's world, survival does not depend on one partner's presence. It only knows that a bond has been severed, and so it cries out as if your very life were at stake. This explains the obsession, the constant replay of what did I do wrong, or what if I had tried harder. These questions are not idle curiosity. They are the brain's attempt to restore the bond. In the wild, losing a partner meant danger, so the mind learned to analyze, to search, to solve. That instinct remains. The problem is that modern heartbreak cannot be solved by analysis. The loss is not an error to correct, it is an absence to accept. Yet, in the depth of this suffering, there is hidden meaning. To feel threatened by the loss of love is to acknowledge how deeply connection matters. It reveals that safety, for humans, is not only food and shelter, but the presence of another who says, "You are not alone." Your pain is proof of how profoundly you valued that presence. Philosophically, this invites a question: is the brain misguided, or is it wise? Perhaps both. Misguided, because it exaggerates absence into danger. Wise, because it reminds you of a truth often forgotten, that humans are not built for isolation. Your longing is not only for your ex, it is for the sense of belonging that all humans crave. Think of a child reaching for a parent's hand. The hand is more than skin, it is security, warmth, survival. As adults, we disguise this need, but it never vanishes. When your partner became your hand to hold, their loss felt like being left alone in the dark. The alarms that ring inside you are echoes of that primal fear. But here is the deeper paradox. While the brain interprets absence as threat, it is also capable of transforming that threat into strength. The very systems that ache now are the ones that will one day allow you to bond again. The vigilance that now scans for loss will in time scan for connection, for safety, for belonging in new forms. The wound of heartbreak is in its own way a reminder of your capacity for trust. Still, before healing, the cycle worsens, because the brain does not only sound the alarm once, it repeats it over and over, in the form of intrusive thoughts, obsessive questions, and endless replay. This is rumination, the broken record of the mind, the loop that reinforces pain. It is the next chapter of why forgetting an ex feels impossible. And so we turn now to that trap, the endless circling of thoughts, the self-reinforcing cycle where memory becomes obsession, and obsession becomes memory again. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the same conversation for the 100th time. The words echo exactly as they did, the tone, the look, the pause that felt endless. You tell yourself to stop, but the thought circles back like a bird that refuses to leave the sky. This is rumination, the broken record of the mind. Rumination is not the same as remembering. Memory is passive, but rumination is active. It is the deliberate, though often unwanted, return to the same scene, the same question, the same what if. Neuroscience shows that this looping is tied to the brain's default mode network, a set of regions that activate when the mind is at rest, drifting inward instead of outward. In Heartbreak, this network becomes overactive, pulling you into endless self-reflection that feels less like insight and more like quicksand. Why does this happen? Because the brain is trying to solve a problem. It interprets the breakup as unfinished business, an unresolved threat, so it replays the past in an attempt to find the error, to locate the moment where things went wrong, as if by doing so it could undo the loss. But relationships are not equations, and the answer never appears. The mind searches, but finds only more questions, more loops. Think of it like an algorithm on a streaming platform. If you watch one video, it suggests another just like it. If you rewatch the same clip, the system assumes you want more of the same, until your entire feed becomes repetition. Rumination works the same way. Each time you revisit the memory of your ex, the neural pathways strengthen, and the brain assumes this must be important, keep showing it, and so the loop deepens, until it feels impossible to escape. From a biological perspective, this repetition makes sense. For your ancestors, obsessing over danger was adaptive. If you encountered a predator, replaying the scene in your mind helped you avoid the same mistake. Rumination was survival. But in Heartbreak, the danger is gone, and the loop becomes maladaptive, a survival tool misapplied to loss. Philosophically, this creates a painful paradox. The very process meant to protect you is the one prolonging your suffering. The mind circles in hopes of healing, but in doing so, it keeps the wound open. The record keeps spinning, the needle stuck in the same groove. And yet within rumination lies an uncomfortable truth. It reveals how deeply you long for meaning. To circle endlessly around the past is not only to crave resolution, but to search for a story. You want the narrative to make sense. You want to understand who you were, who they were, what it all meant. Rumination is not only about them, it is about you. It is the mind's attempt to weave chaos into coherence. Consider the metaphor of a scratched vinyl record. Each time the needle jumps back, you hear the same fragment again and again. It is frustrating, even maddening, but it also reminds you of the music that once played in full. Rumination is the brain's way of trying to hear the whole song again. It is painful, but it is also evidence of how much you valued the melody. Still, science shows that rumination strengthens the very pathways it repeats. Each thought makes the groove deeper, the loop stronger. This is why telling yourself stop thinking about them rarely works. Suppression only highlights the thought, making it rebound louder. The more you try to silence the record, the more it skips back. And here lies the irony. Healing comes not from forcing the loop to end, but from creating new grooves, new experiences, new patterns of thought, new sources of meaning. These give the needle another place to travel. Over time, the record shifts. The old loop remains, but it loses its hold, no longer the only song in the room. Philosophically, this offers a reflection. Perhaps the goal is not to erase rumination, but to transform it, to recognize that your longing for meaning is real, but that the answers you seek in the past will not arrive there. Instead, the story continues forward, and meaning emerges not in what was, but in what will be. Still, in the moment, rumination feels endless. You circle the same questions. Why did they leave? What did I do wrong? Could I have saved it? Each question is a doorway that leads back into the same room, and each time you enter, the room feels more suffocating. But notice this, the loop is not random. It reveals the places where you still feel unresolved, the moments where your sense of self was shaken. Rumination is not only about them, it is about you confronting yourself in the mirror of memory. It is painful, but it is also a form of self-discovery, however unchosen. Yet the danger is real. Left unchecked, rumination can lead to depression, anxiety, even physical illness. The body, bound to the mind, carries the weight of repetition. Sleepless nights, tense muscles, fatigue, these are the toll of looping thoughts. And so, the challenge becomes, how do you break free? How do you move the needle from the groove? The answer begins with awareness. To notice the loop is the first step toward loosening it, and from there, small shifts, new habits, new routines, new connections, can begin to carve alternate grooves. Slowly, the record changes. Slowly, the music continues. But before we turn to how healing happens, there is another irony to explore, because often, the more you fight the loop, the stronger it becomes. Suppression itself makes the thought louder. This is the next chapter in the science of heartbreak, the paradox of thought suppression, and why trying not to think of your ex makes their memory even harder to escape. Try this experiment in your own mind. For the next 30 seconds, do not think of your ex, do not picture their face, do not hear their voice, do not let them appear in your imagination. The harder you try, the quicker they arrive. The memory intrudes, sharp and clear, almost mocking the effort to keep it away. This is the irony of suppression. The more you push a thought down, the stronger it returns. Psychologists call this the white bear effect. After a famous study where participants were told not to think of a white bear, almost everyone failed. The thought appeared precisely because it was forbidden. Suppression requires constant monitoring. The brain must keep checking whether the forbidden thought has surfaced, and in checking, it calls the thought back. The attempt to erase becomes the very act of remembering. This is why trying to force yourself not to think of your ex rarely works. Each "don't think of them" is like shining a spotlight on their image. The brain, instead of silencing the memory, rehearses it, strengthens it, deepens the groove. Forgetting by willpower is like trying to push water with your hands. The harder you press, the more it slips back between your fingers. Neurologically, this happens because thought suppression activates both control and monitoring systems in the brain. The prefrontal cortex, which manages self-control, tries to block the memory, but the monitoring system, the very one that checks if the thought has returned, fires signals that light up the same pathways associated with the memory itself. It is like hiring a guard to keep a door shut, but the guard must keep opening the door to check if the prisoner is still inside. Each check invites escape. Think of memory like a shadow. The more you shine a light trying to erase it, the longer and sharper it becomes. The only way to soften a shadow is not to fight it, but to change the light around it, to let it blend naturally into the environment. Philosophically, this paradox carries a lesson. Some things cannot be forgotten by force. The mind does not obey commands like erase or delete. Instead, it responds to redirection, to the creation of new focus, new meaning. The past cannot be silenced. It can only be absorbed into a larger story. This is why healing often begins not with trying to forget your ex, but with allowing their memory to exist without resistance. To say, yes, they are here. Yes, the thought returns, but it does not control me. In acceptance, the memory loses some of its grip. Like a storm cloud watched calmly from a distance, it passes more quickly when you no longer chase it away. But there is another dimension to suppression. It does not only fail, it backfires. Studies show that the more people try to suppress emotional memories, the stronger those memories return later, often with greater emotional force. The very act of resistance adds energy to the thought. This is why, weeks after telling yourself "I'm over them," you may be blindsided by a dream or a sudden wave of longing. Suppression planted the seeds of return. Think of a ball pressed underwater. For a while you can keep it down, but the pressure builds. When it slips from your grasp, it bursts upward with more force than before. Suppressed memories act the same way. They wait beneath the surface, only to rise with intensity when the grip of control weakens. Yet here lies a hopeful truth. You do not need to fight the memory to move on. The brain is capable of a different process, reappraisal. Instead of forcing the thought away, you can reshape its meaning. Rather than saying "don't think of them," you allow the thought but reinterpret it. This was part of my story, not the whole of it. This shaped me, but does not define me. Over time, reappraisal rewires the emotional response, softening the sting without needing to suppress the image. Philosophically, this offers a new way of seeing heartbreak. Forgetting is not erasure, it is transformation. The goal is not to empty your mind of your ex, but to change the meaning of their presence. They shift from wound to scar, from obsession to memory, from obstacle to teacher. The thought remains, but its power changes. Still, the trap of suppression is easy to fall into, especially in the modern world. You unfollow them, delete the photos, avoid their name. These are necessary steps for healing, but if driven only by force, they can backfire. Each deletion can become a ritual of remembering. Each act of erasure can shine a brighter light on what you wish to dim. The balance lies in gentle distance, not rigid control. And here another layer of the story begins. While suppression happens inside the mind, the world outside constantly feeds reminders. Social media, shared places, mutual friends. These digital and physical echoes act as triggers, reviving the very memories you try to silence. Where are we now? Rumination deepens the groove. and suppression backfires because monitoring recalls the thought. Up next, digital ghosts and sensory triggers, and how to blunt them. You open your phone absent-mindedly, scrolling through the endless river of images and words. And then, without warning, there they are, your ex, smiling in a photo, perhaps with friends, perhaps in a place you once visited together. Your stomach clenches before your mind even forms a thought. It feels like stumbling upon a ghost, except this ghost is alive, moving, posting, existing beyond your reach. These are the digital ghosts of the past. Social media ensures that forgetting is no longer natural. In earlier times, distance softened memory. People moved to different towns, years passed without contact, and the image of an old love faded like ink in the sun. But today, technology refuses to let absence be absence. Instead, it feeds you reminders, vivid and instant, reigniting neural pathways that might otherwise have begun to quiet. Each notification, each photograph, each tag works like a cue in your brain's reward system. Remember dopamine, the messenger of anticipation. Social media exploits it ruthlessly. Every scroll is a gamble, like a slot machine, delivering novelty and surprise. And when the surprise is a glimpse of your ex, dopamine fires, not with joy, but with urgency. The brain lights up, the memory strengthens, the craving returns. Think of it like walking through a house where every room contains a mirror. You try to move forward, but each reflection pulls you back into the past. Digital spaces are filled with these mirrors, and your ex becomes an uninvited companion in your daily life, appearing again and again, just when you start to believe you are moving on. The science is clear. Visual cues are among the strongest triggers for memory. Seeing a face activates recognition circuits in the brain, stirring both the hippocampus and amygdala. Add to that the context of novelty, your ex in a new setting, doing something unexpected, and the memory sharpens even further. It is not just a photograph, it is an emotional spark, reviving the bond chemically as if it were still alive. Philosophically, this raises a troubling question. If memory is meant to fade with time, what happens when technology refuses to give it space? Perhaps part of our suffering today is not only the biology of attachment, but the architecture of modern life. We live in a world where forgetting is harder than ever because reminders are everywhere, unrelenting. And yet there is another layer. Social media does not only show you your ex, it tempts you to watch them. The endless curiosity, are they happy? Do they miss me? Have they moved on? Becomes its own form of addiction. Each click is a hit, a momentary relief or pain, but always engagement. The act of checking becomes a ritual, reinforcing the cycle. Your brain learns that the answer might be just one more scroll away, and so the loop deepens. Think of it as standing at the edge of a window, peering into a house you no longer live in. The view gives you information, but it also keeps you tied. The more you look, the harder it becomes to walk away. But here lies the paradox. While social media fuels the pain, it also reveals a truth about memory. You are not only remembering your ex, you are rehearsing your attachment. Each digital glimpse is like striking a match against old kindling. The fire flares, even if only briefly, and the warmth of recognition mixes with the sting of loss. Philosophically, this invites reflection. Do we keep these ghosts alive because we cannot let go, or because a part of us does not want to? To check their profile is to feel the bond again, even if it hurts. The craving for connection often overrides the craving for peace, and so we torture ourselves with glimpses, even knowing they delay healing. But here is the hopeful truth. Just as the brain learns to associate your ex with constant triggers, it can unlearn. Studies on neuroplasticity show that avoidance of cues gradually weakens their power. Each time you choose not to look, you carve a new groove. At first, the craving intensifies, like withdrawal, but over time the absence of reinforcement allows the memory to dull. The digital ghost loses its power when you stop feeding it. Still, this is no easy task. Social media is not neutral. It is designed to capture attention, to make absence impossible. It preys on curiosity, on loneliness, on the need to compare. In this way, heartbreak in the digital age is doubly difficult. The inner chemistry of attachment collides with the outer architecture of technology, and both keep the past alive. Reflect on this. Perhaps one of the greatest acts of healing today is not just emotional, but technological. The courage to mute, unfollow, or disconnect. Not out of anger, but out of mercy for yourself. To create silence in a world that never stops speaking. To allow memory the space it needs to soften. And yet, even if you step away from the screen, the world outside still holds its triggers. A song, a cafe, a familiar scent can bring your ex rushing back as vividly as any photograph. These sensory cues are ancient, embedded in the deepest circuits of memory. They remind us that forgetting is not only challenged by technology, but by the very design of the human brain. That is where we must go next, into the world of songs, scents, and places, how simple triggers awaken entire emotional landscapes, and why they make letting go feel almost impossible. You are walking through a store when a familiar song begins to play. At first, it is only background noise, but then, in a rush, the world changes. You are no longer in the store, you are in the car where you first heard it together, or in the kitchen where you danced barefoot, or in the silence after an argument when the same melody filled the space between you. The present dissolves, and the past takes its place. This is the power of sensory triggers. They are shortcuts into memory, bypassing conscious thought and striking directly at the circuits of the brain that link emotion with experience. A smell, a sound, a taste. These are not neutral stimuli. They are keys that unlock entire rooms of memory, flooding them with feeling before you even have time to resist. The science behind this lies in the way the brain processes sensory information. Smell, for example, has a unique and direct pathway. Unlike other senses, which pass first through the thalamus, olfactory signals travel straight to the limbic system, the amygdala and hippocampus, the guardians of emotion and memory. This is why scents carry such intensity. A perfume, the smell of coffee, the faint trace of their shampoo, each can revive a relationship more vividly than a photograph ever could. Sound carries a similar power. Music does not only activate the auditory cortex, it engages regions linked to emotion, movement, and memory. That is why a song can make your heart ache, your body tense, your eyes well with tears. The melody is not just sound, it is association. Your brain has woven it into the fabric of your story. Even places carry weight. The cafe where you met, the park you walked together, the apartment you once shared. These locations are imbued with context. They act as cues, sparking networks of memory that intertwine emotion and space. Neuroscientists call this context-dependent memory, the phenomenon where being in the same environment revives the state of mind associated with it. In Heartbreak, this means every familiar place becomes a shrine to what was lost. Think of your brain as a vast web. Each node is a sensory cue, songs, scents, places, and each is linked to a network of memories. When one is activated, the whole web lights up. This is why a single note of music can summon not just an image of your ex, but a flood of emotion, the warmth of love, the sting of loss, the ache of longing. The trigger is small, but the cascade is immense. Philosophically, this raises a painful question. If the world itself is filled with reminders, how can one ever escape? Perhaps the truth is that forgetting was never meant to be clean. Memory is not a file you delete, it is a landscape you walk through, again and again until the paths grow faint. The song will play again, the scent will drift by, but over time, the intensity of the memory shifts. What once felt like fire becomes, eventually, only smoke. And yet, the design is not cruel, it is meaningful. Sensory triggers are part of what makes human memory rich. They bind experience to emotion, ensuring that life is not only lived but felt. The same system that now causes you pain is the one that makes a mother remember the scent of her newborn, or a traveler recall the taste of a distant land. Without it, love itself would be less vivid, less alive. Reflect on this. The reason you cannot walk through the world without being reminded of your ex is the same reason you once walked through the world with them and felt everything shine brighter. Memory and meaning are woven into sensation. To lose one would be to lose the other. Still, the suffering is real. A song can undo months of healing in an instant. A scent can pierce through years of distance. The brain, in its devotion to keeping the past alive, sometimes forgets that you must live in the present. But here lies the hope. Neuroplasticity works even here. New associations can be built. The song that once belonged only to your ex can, over time, gather new meanings. A road trip with friends, a moment of triumph, a quiet night of peace. The cafe can become your cafe, the park your park again, if you allow new experiences to overwrite the old grooves. The trigger does not disappear, but its story can change. Philosophically, this is the heart of healing. It is not about erasing the past, but about reclaiming the present. The world will always hold echoes of your ex, but it can also hold echoes of your resilience. your growth, your future joys. Every trigger that reopens the wound is also an invitation to rewrite the memory, to layer it with new colors. Still, one obstacle remains: the brain's bias of idealization. When memory is triggered, it often paints the past in brighter tones than reality. You recall the laughter, the warmth, the sweetness, while forgetting the arguments, the distance, the flaws. This bias, combined with sensory triggers, makes the ex appear not only unforgettable, but perfect. And that illusion is the next barrier to healing. You find yourself remembering the laughter, but not the silence, the warmth, but not the distance, the sweetness, but not the sting. When the face of your ex returns in memory, it is often bathed in a soft golden light, as if the past were a story told only in highlights. This is the bias of idealization, the mind's tendency to polish memory, to emphasize the good and blur the bad. Psychologists call this rosy retrospection. It is a cognitive bias where people recall past events as more positive than they felt at the time. In relationships, this bias intensifies after loss. The brain, already wired to hold on to connection, edits the narrative to favor what made the bond precious, not what made it difficult. The hippocampus stores the details, the amygdala colors them with emotion, and the bias of idealization paints over the shadows, leaving only the glow. Why does the mind do this? One explanation is evolutionary. By remembering the sweetness of bonds, even flawed ones, humans were more likely to seek connection again. If every breakup left only bitterness, the drive to risk attachment might fade. By editing the past with gentler tones, the brain ensures that love remains desirable, even if painful. Idealization, then, is not a mistake, it is a survival mechanism. Think of memory as a tapestry. Over time, the brighter threads are polished, while the darker ones fade. When you look back, you see a pattern shimmering with beauty, even if, while living it, the fabric felt rough and uneven. The tapestry is not false, it is incomplete, and in its incompleteness lies both comfort and danger. Comfort, because the glow makes you feel that what you shared was meaningful, worth remembering. Danger, because the glow hides the cracks, making you long for something that never truly existed in the perfect form your memory suggests. This is why, after a breakup, you may find yourself thinking, maybe it wasn't so bad, maybe we could try again. The brain, in its bias, presents the highlight reel instead of the full film. It shows you the mountain peaks, not the valleys. It whispers of sweetness, but forgets the bitterness that made the bond unsustainable. Philosophically, this raises a profound dilemma. Do we ever truly remember reality, or only the version of it our mind allows? Perhaps all love stories, once ended, become myths, half-truths reshaped by longing, told with the softness of nostalgia, and perhaps that is part of being human, to carry not only what was but what could have been in the theater of memory. Science suggests that this bias of idealization is reinforced by the brain's reward system. Dopamine remembers the highs more vividly than the lows. Novelty, too, favors the unusual spark of joy over the monotony of frustration. The result is a tilted scale, where the weight of pleasure outlasts the weight of pain. The scales are not balanced, and so the past shines brighter than it should. Think of it like an old photograph. Over time, the image fades unevenly. The sharp lines of conflict blur, while the smiles remain crisp. When you hold the picture, you see the joy, not the tension. You feel warmth, not friction. Memory, selective and forgiving, becomes a story of light. Yet this is not only deception, it is also resilience. To idealize the past is to soften it, to make it bearable. The mind does not always serve truth, it often serves survival. The glow of idealization makes the weight of loss lighter, even as it complicates letting go. But here lies the danger. When you cling to the idealized version of your ex, you compare it to the imperfect present. No new connection, no new experience seems to measure up to the polished myth of the past. This is why some people remain bound for years, trapped not by who their ex truly was, but by the golden version memory has created. Philosophically, this invites a reflection. Perhaps the task is not to erase the glow, but to remember the shadows too. To hold the tapestry of memory in its fullness, bright threads and dark alike. Only then can the story feel complete, and only then can the longing lose its grip. Still, the question remains, why would evolution allow such distortion? Because the alternative would be worse. To remember every flaw with equal force might make us cynical, unwilling to risk intimacy again. Idealization ensures that, even through heartbreak, we remain open to connection. It is a trick of the brain, but one that keeps humanity moving forward. So the next time you find yourself longing for your ex, pause and ask, am I remembering them, or am I remembering the glow? This question does not erase the ache, but it sharpens awareness. It helps you see that the person you miss may not be the one who existed, but the one your mind has polished into myth. And yet, even as idealization binds you, there is a deeper truth waiting beneath it. The reason the brain clings so tightly to bonds, polishing them instead of erasing them, is because attachment itself is an ancient force. Long before social media, long before modern romance, the human brain was designed to hold on, not quickly, not easily, not lightly, but fiercely. To understand why you cannot forget your ex, we must now step into the evolutionary roots of attachment and see why clinging is not a flaw, but a survival strategy written into the history of our species. Close your eyes and imagine the first humans walking the vast plains. Survival was fragile, food scarce, predators lurking, the nights long and cold. In that world, to be alone was to be exposed, but to be bonded was to be safe. Love was not only about tenderness, it was about survival, and this ancient truth still echoes inside you when you long for your ex. Evolution designed your brain to cling. Attachment was not a luxury, it was a necessity. Pair bonds meant two people could share the labor of survival, protect each other from danger, and raise children with a greater chance of living. Those who clung fiercely to their partners, who mourned separation and sought reunion, passed their genes forward. Those who detached too easily risked wandering alone, leaving offspring vulnerable, leaving themselves exposed. Your longing is not weakness, it is ancestry speaking through chemistry. The circuits of attachment, the oxytocin bonds, the dopamine pathways, the vigilance of the amygdala are not modern inventions. They are ancient systems, refined over thousands of generations to ensure that human beings would not let go too easily. When you ache for your ex, you are experiencing the same survival drive that once bound your ancestors together in the face of storms and predators. Think of the crying child searching for its mother. That cry is not strategy, it is instinct, driven by fear of abandonment, by the need for safety. Adults carry the same instinct, though shaped into different forms. Heartbreak is the echo of that same cry. Do not leave me, I need you to survive. The brain does not distinguish between child and lover, between past and present. It only knows that loss feels dangerous, and so it resists with all its force. This is why heartbreak feels bigger than reason. Your logical mind may know the relationship was flawed, may even believe it is for the best that it ended. But the deeper circuits of your brain do not care for logic, they care for survival. They send signals of craving, panic, vigilance. They cling because clinging once saved lives. Philosophically, this offers a new lens on your pain. The ache you feel is not personal failure, it is universal design. Every human who has ever loved has felt the same pull, the same inability to let go quickly. You are not broken, you are participating in the oldest human story, the story of connection and loss, of attachment and survival. Consider the prairie vole, a small rodent often studied in neuroscience. Unlike many animals, prairie voles form lifelong pair bonds. When separated, their stress hormones rise, their behavior changes, their brains show patterns of longing similar to those of humans in Heartbreak. The biology of clinging is not uniquely human, it is a cross-species survival tool. The vole clings because it must, and so do you. But there is another side to this story. The same circuits that make you ache for your ex are also the ones that will one day allow you to bond again. Evolution did not design humans to attach only once. It designed us to attach repeatedly, to sustain connection even after loss. Your pain is not permanent, it is a transition between bonds, the difficult space where survival instincts and modern reality collide. Think of your brain as a rope tied tightly around a tree. When the tree is cut down, the rope does not instantly loosen. It clings to the emptiness, still knotted, still holding. Over time, though, the fibers begin to relax, to untangle, until the rope can bind again elsewhere. The knot of attachment does not vanish easily, but it was never meant to. Philosophically, this invites a reflection on the duality of human love. On one side, it is tender, poetic, filled with meaning. On the other, it is survival, raw and instinctive. The two cannot be separated. To love is to be both a poet and an animal, to feel the sweetness of connection and the desperation of loss. Your heartbreak is not only emotional, it is evolutionary memory, reminding you of how deeply survival and love are entwined. This understanding offers both comfort and challenge. Comfort, because your pain is not unique, it is the shared inheritance of humanity. Challenge, because it means forgetting will never be easy. The brain was not built to let go quickly, it was built to cling, to remember, to mourn, because in mourning lies the proof of love's value. Still, there is a hidden beauty in this design. If your brain clings fiercely, it is because love matters fiercely. If the loss of a partner feels like danger, it is because for countless generations, connection was safety itself. Your longing is not punishment, it is the echo of an ancient wisdom. You are not meant to walk alone. And yet, in today's world, you can survive alone. You have food, shelter, protection, without needing one bond to sustain it. The survival circuits are misaligned with modern reality, and that misalignment is the source of heartbreak's intensity. The brain resists a loss that no longer endangers your life, but still feels as if it does. This is why heartbreak can feel so confusing, why your mind tells you one thing and your body tells you another. Logic whispers that you are safe, but biology shouts that you are not. The dissonance is painful, but also deeply human. It reveals the tension between our ancient past and our modern lives, between survival instincts and conscious awareness. And so, as you ache for your ex, remember this: you are not failing. You are carrying the inheritance of 1,000 generations, a brain built to cling because clinging once meant life. Your suffering is ancient, but so is your resilience. Still, the story of evolution does not end here, because if attachment was designed for survival, then forgetting was never part of the plan. The brain was not built to erase bonds quickly, but to preserve them. To understand why letting go feels impossible, we must now look deeper into this truth, that forgetting runs against the very design of the mind. Long-form recap. Idealization polishes the past, and evolution wired us to cling. Final stretch. Why forgetting runs against design in section 17, plus rewiring. Build new reward circuits in section 19, and use exposure to weaken the charge in section 20. You may have told yourself 100 times, I should be over this by now. You delete the photos, you avoid the places, you fill your days with distraction, and yet the memory returns, uninvited, as sharp as ever. It feels unfair, almost cruel, that the brain refuses to let go. But the truth is simple: forgetting was never part of its design. From an evolutionary perspective, the brain was built to preserve bonds, not erase them. Attachment meant survival, and survival required memory. To forget a partner too easily would have been dangerous. It might have left a child unprotected, a hunter without an ally, a tribe weakened. The brain evolved not for forgetting, but for holding on. The neural circuits of love, dopamine for reward, oxytocin and vasopressin for bonding, cortisol for vigilance, were sculpted to make bonds feel unforgettable. This is why heartbreak feels like fighting against yourself. You are asking your brain to do something it was never meant to do, erase quickly. It is like asking your lungs to stop breathing air, or your stomach to stop craving food. The longing you feel is not weakness, it is biology, working exactly as it was designed. Think of memory as a river. Most experiences are carried downstream, fading into distance, but bonds are like heavy stones dropped into the current. They sink, anchoring themselves at the bottom, shaping the flow of everything around them. You can build new streams, you can change the direction of the water, but the stone remains. To forget completely would be to erase the very landscape of who you are. Neuroscience shows that emotionally charged memories are stored more robustly than neutral ones. The hippocampus prioritizes them, the amygdala amplifies them, and repetition strengthens the pathways. Each time you recall your ex, the bond is rehearsed, reinforced, re-engraved. Forgetting, then, is not natural, integration is. The memory does not disappear, it becomes part of your story, woven into the fabric of your identity. Philosophically, this reveals something profound. Perhaps the goal was never to forget. Perhaps the goal was to carry, to remember, not as a chain, but as a thread in the larger tapestry of your life. The pain comes not because memory is unnatural, but because you resist what your brain was built to do. Hold on. And yet, even as the brain clings, it is also capable of change. Neuroplasticity means new experiences can reshape the circuits, building new pathways alongside the old. The stone remains at the bottom of the river, but new water carves new roots. The bond is never fully erased, but it becomes less dominant, less controlling. Consider this metaphor, a scar on the skin. At first it is raw, tender, a constant reminder of the wound. Over time, it toughens, fades, and becomes part of you without defining you. The scar does not vanish, it transforms. So too with the memory of your ex. Forgetting is impossible, but transformation is inevitable. Still, the resistance to forgetting is powerful. This is why songs, scents, and places bring the memory rushing back, why dreams carry their image long after your conscious mind has moved on, why anniversaries, even years later, spark unexpected waves of longing. The brain treats the bond as important, always ready to remind you. Philosophically, this can feel cruel, but it can also be seen as beautiful. To carry memory is to carry depth. The very fact that you cannot forget is proof that you lived fully, that you gave your heart. If love faded as easily as routine, would it mean as much? The persistence of memory is the price of meaning. Still, to live is to move forward, and clinging too tightly to the past can trap you. The challenge is not to erase, but to reframe, to allow memory to exist without letting it dominate, to say, yes, this mattered, but it is not all that matters. This balance is not easy, but it is possible, because the same brain that clings is also the brain that adapts. Reflect on this. The reason you still think of your ex is the same reason you will one day love again. The circuits that refuse to let go are the same ones that will attach to someone new. Evolution built you to remember, but also to repeat. The bond does not vanish, it makes space for the next. But before we turn toward healing, one truth must be faced. If forgetting is against the brain's design, then moving forward requires something else. The active reframing of memory, the creation of new circuits, the conscious acceptance that loss is not erasure. This is where resilience begins, not in forgetting, but in transforming. And so the next step in our journey is this: how to reframe the process of healing, how to see forgetting not as an act of will, but as the slow work of neuroplasticity, the quiet building of new patterns that eventually outweigh the old. You may have heard people say, time heals all wounds, but in the rawness of heartbreak, that phrase feels hollow. Time alone does not erase the memory of your ex. If it did, you would not find yourself months later still haunted by their face, their voice, their absence. What heals is not time itself, but what happens in time, the gradual reshaping of your brain, the carving of new pathways, the quiet work of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change. It is the reason you can learn new skills, form new habits, adapt after injury. Your neural circuits are not fixed. They are living, shifting, rewiring in response to experience. And this is the hidden process of healing after heartbreak, not forgetting, but rewiring. The memory of your ex remains, but the dominance of that memory lessens as new patterns are built. Imagine a trail in a forest. The path to your ex is well worn, easy to follow, carved by countless steps of thought, memory, longing. Each time you recall them, you walk that path again, making it clearer, smoother, harder to ignore. But neuroplasticity allows for new trails. Each new experience, each new focus, each new act of meaning begins to carve a different route. At first, it is overgrown, difficult, faint, but the more you walk it, the stronger it becomes, until one day it is the natural way forward, and the old path grows faint with disuse. This is why healing is not about forcing yourself to forget, but about building new circuits to balance the old. The brain does not obey commands like stop loving them, it obeys repetition. It rewires through practice. Just as you once trained your mind to associate your ex with reward, you can train it to find reward elsewhere. Philosophically, this reframes heartbreak. It is not a failure of willpower, but a process of growth. The pain you feel is the friction of rewiring, the ache of circuits being reshaped. You are not weak for remembering. You are human in the middle of transformation. Still, this process is not automatic. Neuroplasticity depends on attention. What you focus on, you strengthen. If you continue to ruminate on your ex, the old path deepens. If you shift focus, even gently, toward new activities, new people, new sources of meaning, the new path begins to grow. Healing, then, is not passive, it is active attention, repeated enough to reshape the brain. Think of your brain like clay on a potter's wheel. The shape it holds now was molded by the bond with your ex, softened and spun until it carried their imprint. After the breakup, the clay does not snap back on its own, but with each new movement, each new pressure of experience, the clay reshapes. Slowly, over time, it takes on a new form. The old shape is never erased, but it becomes part of a larger vessel, one that can hold more than you imagined before. Science shows that even deliberate practices, meditation, reframing thoughts, gratitude can alter neural pathways. Each time you reinterpret a memory, each time you tell yourself a new story about your ex, you are not just comforting yourself, you are training your brain to respond differently. The circuits of pain weaken, the circuits of acceptance strengthen. Over time, the emotional charge of the memory fades, even if the memory itself remains. Philosophically, this is profound. Healing is not forgetting. Healing is integration. The past becomes part of you, but not all of you. The story of your ex becomes a chapter, not the entire book. You carry them, but lightly, without the weight of obsession. Still, this requires patience. Neuroplasticity does not happen overnight. It demands repetition, consistency, and gentle persistence. This is why healing feels slow, because it is. The brain must carve new grooves, and carving takes time. But with each new day, each small choice, the change is happening, even if you cannot yet see it. Reflect on this. Every time you laugh with a friend, every time you find joy in music or art, every time you pursue something meaningful, you are rewiring. These small sparks are not trivial, they are the threads of healing. The brain learns from them, builds from them, slowly shifting its allegiance from the old bond to new patterns of life. And here lies the hidden gift of heartbreak. It forces you into neuroplasticity. The loss that feels unbearable also pushes you to grow, to adapt, to reshape yourself in ways you never would have chosen, but that expand your capacity to live. Heartbreak is not only an ending, it is a reorganization of the self, a painful but profound rewiring. Yet, neuroplasticity alone is not enough. The brain also seeks reward, craves the spark of dopamine. If you do not create new sources of joy, the old craving for your ex remains strong. This is the next step in the journey, learning to build new reward circuits, to find pleasure and anticipation not in the past but in the present and the future. Think back to the first weeks of your relationship. The smallest things felt electric, a message lighting up your phone, the sound of their voice, the thought of seeing them soon. Each moment carried not only pleasure but anticipation. This anticipation was dopamine's gift, and your brain learned to tie joy to the presence of your ex. After the breakup, that circuitry does not vanish. It keeps waiting, like a doorbell expecting to ring. But here lies the secret of healing. The same brain that wired joy to your ex can rewire it elsewhere. The reward system is flexible. It is not loyal to one person forever. It is loyal to patterns of reinforcement. To create new sources of pleasure is to begin carving new reward circuits, gradually weakening the grip of the old. Dopamine is often misunderstood as the chemical of happiness, but what it truly drives is motivation, pursuit, the sense that something exciting is just around the corner. It is what makes you check your phone, chase goals, crave discovery. When you fell in love, dopamine surged with every sign of connection. When the bond broke, the system still searched, craving what it had learned to expect. Healing begins when you offer the system something new to anticipate. Imagine your brain as a compass, its needle fixed toward the magnetic pull of your ex. At first, every thought, every craving points in that direction, but if you introduce new sources of reward, creative projects, physical exercise, friendships, learning, new experiences, the magnetic field begins to shift. Slowly, the compass needle wavers, no longer locked on the past but exploring new directions. Science shows that novelty is one of the most powerful drivers of dopamine. New places, new challenges, new skills, each sparks the reward system, often more strongly than routine pleasures. This is why travel, hobbies, and fresh experiences can feel so liberating after heartbreak. They remind your brain that joy is not locked in one person, it is a capacity within you, ready to be awakened elsewhere. But here is the paradox. In the beginning, nothing feels rewarding. Food tastes bland, music feels dull, experiences seem empty. This is withdrawal. The old circuits still dominate, and the new ones are faint. You may try something new and feel no spark, and think, this will never work. But repetition matters. Each attempt carves a groove, and with time the groove deepens. What begins as emptiness can slowly become anticipation again. Philosophically, this offers a profound lesson. Healing is not about chasing happiness. It is about cultivating curiosity. To ask, what else can give me life? What else can spark wonder? Is to invite dopamine into new territory. The process is not about replacing your ex, but about rediscovering yourself. Think of a garden once dominated by a single flower. When that flower is gone, the soil looks barren. But if you plant new seeds, small joys, small risks, they begin to grow. At first they are fragile, but with attention and patience, the garden fills with variety, and the absence of the original flower no longer defines the space. Science confirms that habits of reward can be consciously shaped. Exercise, for example, releases endorphins and stimulates dopamine, building resilience. Creative expression, like writing, painting, or music, engages reward circuits through novelty and mastery. Social connection, even brief conversations, activates oxytocin and dopamine together, reminding the brain that belonging is not limited to one bond. Each of these acts as a drop of water on the dry soil of heartbreak, slowly reviving the ground. But the most powerful rewiring happens when meaning is involved. Pleasure alone fades quickly, but when your actions align with values, growth, purpose, contribution, the reward system learns to fire not only for immediate joy, but for long-term fulfillment. This is why pursuing goals, learning, or helping others can feel deeply healing. They create not just moments of reward, but a foundation for resilience. Philosophically, this reveals something essential. The opposite of longing is not forgetting, it is creation. To build new reward circuits is to step into your own power, to discover that joy is not something given by another, but something you can cultivate. Your ex was a source of reward, but never the only one. The brain is vast, capable of infinite associations, infinite anticipations. Still, this process is uneven. There will be days when the old circuits flare again, when a memory or a trigger pulls you back into longing. That is natural. Healing is not linear, it is layered, but each time you return to a new source of reward, even briefly, you strengthen the new path. Each time you laugh with a friend, immerse yourself in a task, or lose yourself in wonder, you are teaching your brain that life after loss is still rich with anticipation. Reflect on this. One day, without realizing it, you will anticipate something new with the same excitement you once felt for your ex. The system will have rewired, the compass will point forward, the old path will remain, faint but no longer dominant, a scar rather than a wound. But before that day comes, there is another step in the process, because new circuits alone are not enough. The old ones must also be weakened, their emotional charge dissolved. This is where exposure comes in, the paradoxical strategy of facing the memory, not avoiding it, until it loses its power. You may think that the path to healing is avoidance, deleting the photos, avoiding the songs, steering clear of the places you once shared, and for a while, this distance brings relief. The triggers grow quieter, the memories less immediate, but avoidance has its limits, because when the memory finally returns, as it always does, it strikes with undiminished force. True healing requires not just distance, but exposure, the gentle, deliberate act of facing the memory until it loses its power. In psychology, this is called exposure therapy. It is used to treat phobias, anxiety, even trauma. The principle is simple. By encountering the feared memory or stimulus in a safe context, the brain learns that it no longer carries danger. The fear response weakens. The same logic applies to heartbreak. By allowing yourself to face the memories of your ex, not as threats but as echoes, you begin to dissolve the charge they hold. Neuroscience shows that memories are not fixed. Each time you recall one, it becomes malleable, briefly open to change before being restored. This is called reconsolidation. If you revisit a memory in a calm state, if you reframe it consciously, the brain can store it differently, less sharp, less painful. Over time, the same image that once pierced you can soften into neutrality. Think of it like touching a scar. At first, the wound is tender, and even the lightest touch brings pain, but as it heals, you can press against it without flinching. The scar remains, but the sensitivity fades. Exposure is the process of pressing gently, again and again, until the wound becomes memory, no longer raw. Philosophically, this invites a shift in perspective. Healing is not forgetting, it is transforming your relationship with memory. To face the thought of your ex is not to reopen the wound, but to teach your brain that it no longer threatens your survival. The past remains, but its grip loosens. This process is not easy. At first, exposure feels unbearable. A song makes you cry, a photo twists your chest, a familiar street feels haunted, but each time you face the memory and survive it, the brain learns a new lesson. This hurts, but it does not destroy me. Slowly, the fear circuits quiet, and the memory loses its sting. Science confirms this. In studies of exposure therapy, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, shows decreased activation after repeated safe exposure to triggers. The hippocampus, instead of amplifying the emotional charge, begins to store the memory in a calmer frame. The same mechanism that once engraved pain becomes the pathway to relief. But exposure is not only scientific, it is deeply human. To revisit the places you once shared, to listen to the songs, to look at the photos, is to reclaim them. They stop belonging only to your ex. They become part of your broader story, layered with new meaning. The cafe is no longer their cafe. It is yours again, once you walk through its doors without fear. Reflect on this. What if healing is not about erasing the places and songs of your life, but about reclaiming them, to let them hold not only the weight of the past, but the lightness of new moments? This is the alchemy of exposure, turning what once hurt into what now belongs to you again. Still, exposure must be gentle. To force yourself too quickly can re-traumatize, strengthening the bond instead of weakening it. The art lies in pacing, allowing the memory in small doses, reframing it with each encounter, building resilience gradually. Healing is not conquest, but patience. Philosophically, this mirrors life itself. We cannot avoid pain forever. We must face it, integrate it, let it shape us without defining us. To avoid is to remain in fear. To face is to find freedom. Heartbreak then becomes a practice in courage, the willingness to walk through the haunted spaces of memory until they are no longer haunted at all. And yet, as powerful as this process is, there is another layer that makes it even more profound. Because heartbreak does not only reveal the malleability of memory, it also reveals astonishing truths about how love and loss shape the very perception of reality. The next step in our journey brings us into these revelations, the moments where science and human experience converge to show that love, pain, and memory are inseparable from the way we perceive time, self, and existence itself. Pause for a moment and notice your body. The ache in your chest when you think of your ex, the heaviness in your stomach, the sudden sting in your throat. These sensations are not metaphors, they are literal. Science shows that the pain of heartbreak activates the same brain regions as physical pain. To lose someone you love is in a very real sense to be wounded. Functional MRI studies reveal that areas like the anterior cingulate cortex, which process physical injury, also light up during social rejection and romantic loss. When you say, "My heart is broken," your brain is not speaking figuratively. It is translating emotional injury into the same neural language as a cut, a burn, or a bruise. This is why heartbreak feels physical, because it is. Think of it this way. Your partner was not just an idea in your mind. They were woven into your body's rhythms. Your heartbeat adjusted to theirs during moments of closeness, your breathing synchronized during sleep, your stress hormones calmed in their presence. When the bond is severed, your body registers the absence as injury. You ache because the systems that once aligned now stand alone, struggling to recalibrate. But heartbreak does not only mimic pain, it bends time itself. People in the depths of loss often describe days that drag endlessly, nights that stretch without mercy. Neuroscience explains this too. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of anticipation, helps regulate the brain's perception of time. In love, dopamine surges with expectation, making moments feel fast, vivid, alive. After loss, dopamine drops and time slows. Each minute feels longer, heavier, because the brain's engine of anticipation has stalled. Philosophically, this distortion of time reveals something profound. Love does not just change how we feel, it changes how we exist. To be bonded is to live in accelerated time, where days fly because they are full. To be heartbroken is to live in expanded time, where days crawl because they are empty. Love speeds life, loss slows it. Both are true, and both are part of being human. And then comes another revelation. The brain would rather cling to pain than face emptiness. Studies show that humans often prefer negative social bonds to no bonds at all. The brain's attachment circuits are so powerful that they treat even conflict, even dysfunction, as better than isolation. This is why people return to relationships they know are harmful. It is not weakness, it is survival instinct. Better a flawed bond than none at all. Think of it like a fire on a cold night. Even if the fire smokes, even if it burns your skin, you cling to it because the alternative is freezing darkness. The brain clings to love, even toxic love, because it equates absence with danger. To walk away feels like stepping into the cold, and so the craving for the flame persists. Philosophically, this raises unsettling questions. Do we love because it is good, or because we fear emptiness? Is the pain of heartbreak proof of love's beauty, or proof of our terror of being alone? Perhaps it is both. Perhaps the truth is that love is not only joy, but necessity, and heartbreak reveals the cost of that necessity. And yet, within these revelations lies hope. If heartbreak mimics physical pain, then, like pain, it heals. The bruise fades, the cut closes, the wound scars but stops bleeding. If heartbreak distorts time, then like time, it shifts. The days that now crawl will one day flow again. And if the brain clings to pain rather than emptiness, then the task is not to silence the longing, but to fill the emptiness with something new, new bonds, new meaning, new sources of warmth. Reflect on this. The mind's resistance to forgetting is not cruelty, but proof of how deeply you are wired for connection. You cannot erase the pain because it is tied to the very same circuits that once gave you joy. To remove one would be to remove the other, and so the wound remains until it transforms. But transformation is possible. Just as the brain once rewired itself to bind you to your ex, it can rewire again to bind you to new love, new life. The same regions that now flare with pain will in time flare with joy again. The science of heartbreak reveals not only why forgetting is so hard, but also why healing is inevitable. And this brings us to the final step of our journey, the silent gift of memory. To see that your brain does not hold your ex to punish you, but to remind you of your capacity for love. To understand that remembering is not the enemy, it is the doorway to loving again. There comes a moment, often much later than you expect, when the memory of your ex no longer strikes like lightning. Their face may appear in your mind, their name may surface in conversation, a song may play that once belonged to them, and instead of piercing pain, you feel only a quiet echo. The wound has become a scar, the memory has shifted from torment to teacher. This is the silent gift of memory. Your brain does not hold on to your ex to punish you, it holds on because that is what it was designed to do: preserve bonds, protect lessons, keep the story of love alive. If it erased too quickly, connection would lose its weight, bonds would be fragile, disposable, without gravity. By refusing to forget easily, the brain gives meaning to what mattered. Neuroscience shows that memory is not a simple archive, it is a living process. Each time you recall your ex, you are not retrieving a frozen image, but reconstructing the memory, blending fact with emotion, reshaping the story. Over time, this reconstruction changes, the sharpness dulls, the emotional charge softens, the perspective widens. What once felt like an open wound becomes part of the larger fabric of your life. Think of your memories like stones in a river. At first, they are jagged, cutting your hands each time you touch them. But as the water of time and experience flows over them, they smooth, they remain, but they no longer wound. Instead, they become polished, glistening with the light of perspective. Philosophically, this reveals a profound truth. To remember is not to be chained, it is to carry forward. Your ex remains part of you, but not as a weight that drags you down, as a thread woven into the tapestry of your becoming. Every bond, even those that end, expands who you are. To remember them is to remember your own capacity for love, for risk, for vulnerability. And this is the paradox of heartbreak. The very pain you wish to erase is the same capacity that will one day allow you to love again. The brain's refusal to forget is not cruelty, it is preparation. It is keeping alive the circuits of connection so that when you meet someone new, you will be ready to bond again, deeply and fiercely. Consider this. Your brain remembers your ex with such intensity because it is designed to ensure that love matters. If it could erase instantly, love would be shallow. But because it lingers, love shapes you. Even loss becomes part of the architecture of who you are. The memory is no longer an enemy, it is an inheritance. And perhaps this is the final lesson. You do not need to forget your ex to heal. Healing is not erasure, it is transformation. The memory remains, but it changes form. What was once fire becomes ember. What was once chain becomes thread. You carry them, yes, but lightly, as part of your story, not as its whole. Reflect on this. One day, you will sit with someone new, and laughter will come easily. You will hear a song and smile instead of ache. You will walk through familiar streets and feel not haunted, but free. And in those moments, you will realize that your ex did not vanish. They became part of the foundation upon which your new joy stands. The silent gift of memory is this. It shows you that you are capable of connection so deep it cannot be erased. And though that depth once hurt, it is the same depth that makes life meaningful. Your brain clings, yes, but not to trap you, to remind you that love is worth remembering, worth risking, worth living for again. So when you ask yourself, why can't I forget my ex? Know this, you are not supposed to. You are supposed to carry them, not as a wound, but as a reminder of your capacity to love and to love again. And with that, the journey comes full circle. From the haunting first memory to the final transformation, you see now that forgetting was never the goal. Understanding was, and in understanding, you find peace.